So glad you guys can make it. I'm going to be going officially live in a few minutes. Going to be talking about the game of chess and checkers and what it has to do with the world right now. So stay tuned. Hopefully, you guys can stay for the whole broadcast. Right now, I'm clearing my space with some sage, inviting good, positive energy into this discussion today. I hope that you guys are feeling feeling like being involved in the discussion and putting in your input, being ready to talk. Please don't be shy. Hi. Getting ready to start shortly. How's everyone doing? Everyone holding on through all these changes? The universe is playing no games with any of us. I put it that way. But it's all for the good, ultimately. We're talking about chess and checkers. Please don't hesitate to comment and be involved in the discussion. I don't like when I'm just talking by myself. I like being involved in dialogue. I like to hear everyone's opinions. Everybody always has a different take on what's going on and their ideas, so it's very much welcomed at this time. I'm healthy and alive. That's the blessings of these days. Absolutely. There's always more than one side of everything. There's always more than one perspective. So we can look at everything that happens in our lives or to us as negative, or we can choose to see the positive side of things. So it's great that you're seeing the positive side of it. You're healthy and you're alive. Everybody can't say that. And even if they're in a place where they're not those things, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It's everything is just a learning experience. All right. So hope you guys are ready for this evening. So this was actually a requested topic. I was not planning on doing a live about this, but someone actually requested that I talk about this. So tomorrow is Juneteenth. So it's the Independence Day that is celebrated. Hi. It's the Independence Day that is celebrated by those of us that are melanated. So when the slaves were emancipated or set free, we celebrate Juneteenth as our July 4th. And this particular year, I've been seeing a lot more people that are wanting to participate in the festivities, who are feeling hella black and hella proud, wanting to participate in Juneteenth, whereas that was not a thing that they wanted to do in the past. A lot of people were still like red, white, and blue, flying their flag proudly. But this year, with everything that has been going on in the news media with the men and women that are melanated that have been killed by police, so it's kind of fostered this sense of patriotism to be melanated. Well, that's not really patriotism, but proudness of being melanated. So before I really get started into talking about the topic of chess and checkers today, I wanted to let you guys know that there is a lot going on in the cosmos. And I know that if you guys have been following me for some time, it seems like I'm always saying that whenever I do an Instagram live, it seems like I'm always on here when there's like a lot going on in the cosmos, telling everybody like, hey, chill out, sit down right now, don't do anything crazy. And that's kind of why I'm on this live today, but we'll get into that later. So right now we are wrapping up Venus retrograde. So Venus is known as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, if you know about Greek and Roman mythology. Um, and so Venus in our natal chart represents how we give and receive love. So this planet has been in retrograde for some weeks now, since sometime in May. And so now we're coming up on the conclusion of that. So typically, when planets go into retrograde, it's kind of like a portal to the past for us, so to speak. So a lot of different things will be coming up from past lives that you might be dealing with, surrounding all things related to love. Venus rules Libra and Taurus. So Libra is like the masculine expression of Venus. Taurus is the feminine expression of Venus. So wherever those energies are in your chart, you might have been dealing with a lot of things in that, like retrograding in within you to work through. So we're coming up on the conclusion of the Venus retrograde, but Mercury just went into retrograde. Mercury rules all things dealing with communication, how we think, how we process information. See, good. I would love to learn more. Absolutely. That's why I'm here tonight. So, concluding Venus retrograde, Mercury just went retrograde. So we know that electronics typically go haywire, the internet. Matter of fact, maybe a couple of Mercury retrogrades ago, like social media crashed. And the phone carriers, ironically, went down a couple of days ago, like just before Mercury hit station to go into retrograde. So a lot of times when things are happening in the world around us, we can look to the sky to see, like, okay, so there might be something going on to explain what's going on. We're also coming up on the summer solstice. And if you guys have been following my page, I might start quizzing you guys. What have I been telling you to watch out for around every equinox and every solstice? Be careful. Be very careful, be watchful, and be sober-minded and be vigilant. Equinox and solstice. There's some things that typically go on around these times. So I want you guys to be watchful and be careful. And in addition to these things, we also have about 5 planets that are now officially retrograde. So retrograde is a time to go introspective. It's not a time to be like outward and expressing certain things. It's a time to go within self and to figure out the within. So a lot of times we want to do the without part. We want to communicate, we want to express love, we want to do this, we want to do. But when there are planets retrograding, it's time for us to look inwardly to work on those energies within us and figure out any lessons that we were supposed to be gaining through the knowledge that these planets give us with their interactions with each other. Okay, so my best recommendation, I'm just going to put this out here and we'll just kind of go into more details about it later. But my best recommendation for those of you guys that want to be out and about doing things, protesting, rioting, tearing shit up, whatever, don't do it right now, please. Oh, yes. I'm so glad that I remember that. In addition to everything that I mentioned, Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, 3 other planets retrograding, summer solstice, we also have a solar eclipse in Cancer coming up. So solar eclipse typically marks new beginnings of things. So the sun and the moon, their paths cross on the ecliptic plane, and so one of them blocks out the light of the other. So in the case of a solar eclipse, the moon or the mother energy is blocking out the light of the sun, the father energy. So eclipses can have some unpredictable type energies, so to speak. So if you're planning on rioting or protesting or tearing down statues or tearing shit up, lighting shit on fire for Juneteenth, don't do it. Just please just take my advice and don't do it. Use the time. If you want to do something for Juneteenth, I would recommend like really sitting down and acknowledging your ancestors within you. So just like your ancestors exist in spirit form, in the ethers or whatever dimension or plane that they're on, they're also within you. So I would recommend, since this is clearly a heavy retrograde season, to go within and to honor those ancestors within you. As within, so without. As without, so within. So keep that balance of the internal and the external. Whatever is happening in reality and life is also happening within. So if there's craziness and war going on in the astral or in the physical, there's also war and chaos going on within you. So you have to balance what you're doing inwardly and what you're doing outwardly. Make sure that you don't get so focused on expressing outwardly that you forget to do the inner work. Okay, so now that I've put that disclaimer out there, be careful, watch yourself. Now let's get into what I was going to talk about this evening. Chess and checkers, right? Okay, so like I said, please engage in dialogue with me. Don't be shy. Drop your comments down there and I'll respond to them as they come. So, chess and checkers. There are two games that are pretty popular. Two board games that are pretty popular. Most people have heard of them. Most people have played checkers. Not as many people learn chess. There's a reason for that. But I'm going to really be talking to you guys about both games. I'm going to focus a little bit more heavily on one than the other, but I'm going to be talking about both games to give you a good understanding of how you can use this wisdom in your own life. So if you look at a chess and a checkerboard, they look very similar, right? You have the alternating squares of the light and the darkness and the duality, right? But the games are very different. So with checkers, you have the red pieces and you have the black pieces, right? What is the goal of checkers? The goal of checkers is for a single piece to make it all the way on the other side of the board to the enemy side to get kinged. And then once the little piece is king, then he can like come back and do all kinds of crazy stuff. He can like leap over this and slide this way and jump this person and take everybody's pieces, basically to be a warring king, so to speak, a conquistador, a conquering king. That is the goal of checkers, is to take all the opponent's enemy's pieces off of the board and to get kinged. You want as many kings as possible with checkers. Although the boards look a lot alike, chess is not played like that. With chess, there are 16 pieces on each side. Each piece has a different role. Okay, so in the game of chess, you have 8 pawns. You have 2 rooks. You have 2 knights. You have 2 bishops. You have 1 king and you have 1 queen, right? So what does this have to do with anything? Checkers is a game for pawns. So if you start to research chess and you know what each piece means, you'll understand. Hi, so glad you could make it. You'll understand what I mean when I say that checkers is a game for pawns. So let's talk a little bit more about the pieces on the chessboard. So the pawns, there's 8 of them, right? So each piece is going to move at in a different order or a different fashion, right? So when it comes down to the enemy pieces, who are they going to see first? Who are they going to encounter first? Are they going to encounter the king first, or the queen first, or the rook, or the knight, or the bishop? No, they're going to run into a pawn first. And guess what? There's more pawns than any other piece on the board. So Pawns are quote unquote disposable, right? So let me get to what I'm alluding to here. Sometimes we can hear an idea. Oh, people are going protesting, they're rioting, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're showing out, they're showing up, they're hella black, they're hella proud, right? You can also get caught up in a wave. You can be doing something that you don't need to do. What if you're supposed to be a knight, or you're supposed to be a rook, or you're supposed to be a bishop, and you're following the pawns? You're out here blowing up a Popeyes or doing whatever. You're out of position. So that means that you're outside of protection, right? So it's important to know thyself. Above all else, if you probably listen to anything that I say, of all the different avenues that I take to say things, I'm always telling people to know yourself. Go within and know yourself without a shadow of a doubt. Because when you know yourself, it's hard for anyone to deceive you and to tell you that you're someone that you're not. A lot of people are operating in capacities that they were not designed to operate in, or they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. They're living lifestyles that are out of alignment with who they're supposed to be in this lifetime. So you can get caught up in a wave, following people, following the crowd, and you might be supposed to be doing something different. So when I say that checkers is a pawns game, why did I say that? A pawn has very simple range of motion on a chessboard. Okay, so the pawn is moving like one square at a time to get to the opposing team side. And once the pawn gets to the other side, whatever that other side is, when that pawn gets to the other side, then it can become something else other than a king, right? Nobody really wants to be a pawn, so to speak, but there are a lot of people out here that are acting like pawns. They're not thinking things through. They're not using strategy. They don't know who they are. They're just moving with the waves, right? So once that pawn gets to the other side, it can become another piece, just not a king. See, the game of checkers has everybody the pawns basically wanting to become the king. I'm a king, I'm a king. Okay, so can you move like the king moves? If you're talking about that you're a knight, can you move like the knight moves? If you're calling yourself a bishop, or you're calling yourself a rook because it looks nice or it sounds nice, are you moving like a rook moves? Are you moving like a knight moves? Are you moving like a bishop moves? Or did the title just sound nice? I'm a king, I'm a king. King me. Do you have the protection of the king? Because the other pieces on the board protect the king. The king and the pawn, they have similar moves that they're able to make per se, but the pawn does not have the protection that the king has. Everybody else is literally protecting the king on the board. So when the enemy comes, in whatever form that enemy is, it could be an idea, it could be a person, it could be a situation, it could be something in life. But when the opposition comes, if a pawn is running around talking about king me, I'm a king, I'm a king, guess what? The opposition is going to try that pawn to see if he's a king. Talking about I'm a knight, I'm a knight. The opposition is going to try you like a knight. And guess what? If I'm the opposition and I'm like, okay, this person over here is talking about they're a rook, or they're a knight, or they're a bishop or something, and I start swatting from the left, or I swat from the right, I'm going to know who you are based on how you move, right? So if you're talking about it, okay, so if let's just use a knight for example. If you're talking about I'm the knight in shining armor, and opposition swats at you or swats at you from the right or swats at you from the left, guess what? A knight knows how to move to get out of the way. Yeah. The knight knows how to take an L or move like an L to get out the way. But if you're a pawn pretending to be a knight or talking about you're a knight because the knight sounds like it's a good job to be, or it's something honorable to be, you're not going to be able to move to get out of the way, right? The pawn, it literally is taking one step at a time. So when the opposition comes and swats from the left or swats from the right, and you couldn't move like an L, guess what? The pawn gets knocked off the board, right? Then that pawn is gone. Okay, next pawn. Next pawn. So when I'm saying these things, we have to be very careful with how we're moving. And let me also say this. There is no piece on that board that is more or less important than the other. Ultimately, in the game of chess, the king is the most... Okay, let me put it this way. If the opposing side gets to the king, the game is over, basically. So if the king is taken, the game is officially over. But who is the king? So, okay, mention that. So there's, like I said, there's 8 pawns on the board. So the pawns represent the crowd. So in order for you to be successful in whatever you're trying to undertake, if you're looking at the situation of what's going on in the world and you're wanting change, you're wanting a revolution, guess what? The planets in the universe is in alignment with revolution and with change. It is coming, but you have to be careful with the way in which you're going about that change. Don't be out here operating in something that you're not supposed to be operating in, or following the crowd, or looking at this piece over here. Oh, this looks interesting. I want to be the king. I want to be the queen on the board. I want to be the bishop. I want to be the knight. I want to be the rook, but not having that training that the rook or the bishop or the knight or the queen or the king has to be able to move and maneuver in a particular manner. So you definitely want to be careful about that. Okay, so back to what I was talking about as far as how this relates to everything that's going on in the world. So you have a lot of unrest going on right now. You have a lot of change that's coming. You have a lot of people that are angry right now. So emotions are in high gear. So you have the virus going around. You have the police brutality situation. You have the police brutality and the versus the Black Lives Matter. And then you have a lot of people that are getting into discussions, heated discussions and arguments with people online because they're not, say, participating, or they're not standing up for Black lives, and they're not using their voices the way that someone else that is melanated thinks that this person should be responding. And it's making people angry. And I'm not saying at all to not be angry. I'm not saying to not to do what is necessary to bring change about. What I am saying is that you must be strategic in how you're bringing the change about. Don't be getting caught up in the wave of something that you don't need to be a part of. Because ultimately, you have to know who you are. In order to know who you are, you have to get in touch with yourself. You have to be in tune with yourself to know what piece you're supposed to be on this chessboard. Like I said, there's no piece, even though the king is protected, and if the king is taken, the game is over. Ultimately, there is no piece that is better than another piece. Okay, every piece has a purpose for being on that board. Every piece has a different assignment for being on that board. And just because someone is a king in this realm or this dimension doesn't mean that he or she, well, he is more important than a pawn. A pawn could be here in this dimension learning something, could be a king in some other realm or dimension, but needs to learn whatever we're learning in this realm. And so they have to go through certain steps. So you have to be mindful to stay in your own lane, focus on you, your calling, and your mission, not exalting yourself higher than someone else, also not subjugating yourself to be lower than someone else, recognizing everybody has importance in this game. And if you're going to win, if you're going to bring about the necessary change that you and the world want to see, you have to be strategic about how you go about it. And like I said, a lot of times there are, and I see it all the time, people looking at other people, a rook wanting to be a bishop, or a bishop wanting to be a rook wanting to be a knight, or a pawn wanting to be a king. Don't be out here trying to play chess with a checkers mentality. The pawn just trying to get across on the other side of the board. So king me. Yeah. Give me all the chips, like stack all the chips on top of each other. Yeah, I want to jump all the other pieces on the board. Yeah. Whole bunch of kings, right? Does not take as much strategy. So if you're playing this game of revolution, you're playing checkers and your opponent is playing chess, you're going to lose every time. So I highly recommend study the game of chess. What does each piece do? How do they move? How is this relevant to me? How am I supposed to be moving right now? Am I supposed to be over here? Am I supposed to be over here? Am I supposed to be moving like this? Am I supposed to be moving like this? Am I supposed to be moving at an angle? Because guess what? You might not know who you are, but your opponent is going to know who you are based on how you're moving. So if you think that you're supposed to be a knight and you have not gone through the knight's training, you in trouble. If you are a knight and you acting like a pawn, you in trouble. Because your protection is in being that knight, not in following the crowd and being the pawn. There's a reason why there's 8 pawns on the board, because they get swept off easily because they can't move in the same way that some of the other pieces on the board moves. So, on that note, I just my heart's desire is that everybody just really take time to get to know themselves, to not focus on what anybody else is doing, to not focus on what any other piece on the board is doing, but just know thyself. Get in tune with yourself and understand why you're here. What is your purpose? What are you called to do in this lifetime? And stick with that, because your protection is in being where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do. If you're supposed to be the queen, cool. That's all well and good. But guess what? When it's time to move like a queen, you have to have successfully gone through that training to be able to move like the queen. You can't be out here doing whatever everybody else is doing. You can't be being the pawn. So stay focused. Please don't be out here on Juneteenth cutting up, acting a fool. Stay focused. Stay grounded. Protect your energy. Focus on going within yourself and healing those things that need to be worked on. Because ultimately, something flying in my face. Ultimately, when you do the inner work, your outer world transforms. So thank you for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to leave them in the comments. If you would like to make a love donation, the link is in my bio. And thank you again, and we will talk soon.